You thought Mrs. Adejoke Silva's shame had reached its peak? You thought being thrown out of a gala and abandoned by her husband was the worst? No! The truth is, all that disgrace was only a drum roll, preparing the stage for the kind of revelation that will collapse an empire overnight. It began with a simple headline: Mysterious Case of the Billionaire's Wife, Hidden Truth on View. The article came from an investigative journalist named Chukwuka Nwokedi, a man known for exposing powerful politicians and businessmen. He had been quietly following Mrs. Silver's trail for months. Now he was ready to reveal what he had found. Inside his report was a bombshell. Mrs. Silver's wealth wasn't just from her husband's empire. Long before she became the Queen of Lagos, she had been involved in an illegal property deals, land grabs, and silent partnership in companies that cheated thousands of ordinary Nigerians out of their savings. But that wasn't the most shocking part. No, the real heartbreak came when Chuka released a video, one that spread like wildfire. In it, Mrs. Silver was seen, years ago, sitting in a dimly lit office. Her voice was clear, sharp and merciless. In the video, she said, "If they cry, let them cry. Money is not for the weak. If they are foolish enough to trust us, then they deserve to suffer. Who cares about their children? Business is business." Gaps swept across the nation. That one clip turned her from a disgraced socialite into a villain of the people. It was no longer about gossip, no longer about attitude. It was about evil laid bare in her own words. Within hours, protests erupted. Angry youth carried placards outside her mansion, chanting, "Jail Mrs. Silver, justice for the poor." The same people who once cheered her at the public events were now demanding her head. Inside the mansion, panic reigned. Chief Bamidele Silva, red-eyed and furious, confronted his wife. "Adejoke, you have destroyed us. Adejoke, you have destroyed us. Do you know what this means for me? Did you know what this means for our name and our family? I can't survive many things at a time, Adejoke. Not this one, not this one. Adejoke." Adejoke was trembling, trying to hold his hand. "Bamidele, please. I didn't mean it like that. Please. It was years ago. I don't know why these people bring it out. I didn't even know they recorded me. Please, Bamidele, don't leave me alone." "You didn't mean it? Did you just say you didn't mean it, Adejoke? You said those words with your chest. You spat on those very people who made us rich. And now they want my company, my legacy, everything I built because of you, Adejoke. You have killed me," Chief Bamidele said angrily. Her children, who had been shielding themselves from the scandal, finally snapped to her. Her daughter, Kemi, glanced at her with disgust. The other one, named Tolu, said, "Mommy, how could you? How could you talk about people's children like that? Do you know what they are calling me in school now? A monster's daughter." It was a knife to her heart. For the first time, Mrs. Silver's family turned their back on her completely. But fate wasn't done. Chuka, the journalist, promised a part 2 of his Exposed, and in that preview, he hinted at something darker. This isn't just about money. There is a blood debt hidden in Mrs. Silver's past, a secret that has been buried for years, and it's time the world knows the truth. My people, can you hear that? A blood debt. The street buzzed with theories. Some said she sacrificed someone for wealth. Others said she was involved in a tragedy covered up long ago. But only Chuka knew the full truth, and he swore to reveal it in 7 days. Inside her mansion, Mrs. Silver couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps coming for her. She locked herself in her room, curtains drawn, phone turned off, but still the voice of the past would not leave her. At night, she dreamt of crying faces, the maid who had been beaten unjustly, the driver who died without her mercy, and now A shadow figure she could not name, standing at the edge of her bed, whispering, "The blood you owe, the blood you owe, the blood you owe is coming to collect." She would wake up screaming, clutching her chest. But no one came to comfort her. Not her husband, not her children, not her friends. And so, the once proud billionaire wife sat alone in her palace, knowing that the next revelation will not just destroy her reputation, it will open the grave of secrets so dark it could drag her soul into ruin forever. But here is the real suspense. What exactly was this blood debt? Was it the loss of a life, or the betrayal of someone closer than she ever imagined? The night was heavy with expectation. All across the city, people gathered and clustered around the radio, in front of flickering televisions, or glued to the glow of their phones. Social media had been boiling since morning. Hashtag rolled, blood debt, Mrs. Silver, truth at last. The whole nation knew tonight would not be ordinary. Chuka sat in the newsroom, his eyes dark with determination, the documents laid out before him like holy scriptures of justice. The producer whispered nervously, glancing at the countdown clock on the wall. Even they could feel it. Whatever it was about to reveal would shake the very foundation of power. When the red light of the camera blinked, silence swept the room. "Good evening, Nigeria," Chuka began, his voice steady, deep and deliberate. "For weeks, you have asked me what is the blood debt. Tonight, the truth will not hide anymore." He lifted a weathered file and placed it before the camera. "This," he said, "is the story that Mrs. Silver tried to bury it with money. She tried to bury it with power and with lies. But the dead do not stay buried forever." The nation leaned closer. He continued, his words slicing the air. 30 years ago, before Mrs. Adejoke Silver became the icon you know today, there was another woman, her best friend, her sister in struggle, her business partner. Her name was Adaku. A gasp ripped through the live audience. The name was familiar, whispered in the rumor, but never spoken openly. Adaku was the true architect of the wealth we now see trapped on Mrs. Silver's empire. They began together, selling fabrics, dreaming of a better life. But Adaku disappeared mysteriously, and no one ever saw her again. Chuka leaned forward. "Tonight, we reveal the truth. Adaku did not vanish. She was betrayed by the very woman she called sister." The newsroom shivered. A cameraman dropped his pen. Document and testimony confirmed. Chuka pressed on, his voice now carrying fire. "That, when their business was on the verge of collapse, a ritual was performed, a sacrifice, blood for wealth, and Adaku was the chosen lamb." The world froze. "Mrs. Silver made a covenant," Chuka said, his eyes burning into the lens. "A covenant sealed not with ink, but with the blood of her closest companion. The success, the fame, the endless riches, it was all built on Adaku's life. That, Nigerians, is the blood debt." Gasps filled the streets. Some cried out in disbelief. Some clutched their chests as though struck by lightning. Inside her mansion, Mrs. Silver fell to her knee, clutching her head, as if the words themselves were arrowing piercing her soul. But Chuka was not done. "This is not hearsay. These are facts backed by eyewitnesses, legals, and secret recording from those who served in her household. We have the signed covenant smeared with blood. We have the diary of a priest who confessed before his death that he conducted the ritual. We have voice of those who knew, but were too afraid to speak until now." He paused, letting the weight of his word thunder across the nation. "And hear this," he added, his tone sharp as blade. The covenants require more than Adaku's blood. It demanded that every 10 years, another life must fall to renew the wealth. Trace the timeline yourself. Every decade, someone close to Mrs. Silver has mysteriously died. Partners, associates, even lawyer staffs. This is not coincidence. This is the price of a blood oath. Scream erupted from viewing centers across Lagos. Mothers pulled their children closer. Fathers shook their head in horror. Chuka's voice softened, but it struck even deeper. Adaku's only daughter is still alive, living in poverty, unaware that her mother's death brought another woman's crown. And now, she demands justice. She is ready to speak, ready to show the world that her mother's blood cries out from the ground. The producer flashed a pre-recording video. A young woman, thin, her eyes hollow but fierce, speaking directly to the nation. "My name is Ifeoma Adaku," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Mrs. Silver killed my mother. I was only a child when it happened, but I remember the night she left and never returned. I want the world to know. My mother's blood will not spin in vain." The room fell into stunned silence. Chuka turned back to the camera. "This is the blood debt. It is not rumor. It is not gossip. It is truth. And now the world must decide. Will we allow the rich to buy silence forever? Or will we demand justice for Adaku and for every soul taken to pay for another glories?" The cameraman zoomed in, his face itched with unshakable resolve. "This," Chuka whispered, "is only the beginning." And the screen faded to black. The night sky had never felt so heavy. It was as though the clouds themselves had frozen, holding their breath with the nation. After Chuka's broadcast ended, silence reigned for only a moment. Then the world exploded. All across Lagos, shouts rang from bars, markets and homes. Radios cracked with frantic voices. TV pundits rushed into emergency discussion. Hashtag flooded timeline like a river breaking its back. Justice for Adaku, blood debt, Chuka the fearless. Phone rang endlessly. Screen lit up with notification. Nigeria was not just watching, they were burning. In the newsroom, Chuka pulled off his microphone. His hand shook slightly, though his face betrayed nothing. Producers scrambled to manage the incoming storm. Calls from international stations were already pouring in. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, everyone wants him live. "You've started a war, Chuka," his editor whispered, half in awe, half in fear. Chuka gave a thin smile. "No, I've only revealed the one thing that was already being fought in shadow." Meanwhile, in Mrs. Silver's mansion, chaos torn through the golden walls. Curtain had been ripped down, plates smashed, servants wept openly. The woman, who once embodied elegance, was now a trembling figure on the floor. Her silk gown soaked in sweat, her wig discarded, her eyes wild with terror. They all know," she muttered, rocking herself. Adaku's daughter, she lives? She dared to speak? How dare she speak?" Her lawyer tried to calm her down, his voice urgent. "Madam, listen to me. Damage control is still possible, okay? Damage control is still possible. We can sue them. We can call it a defamation." But she cut him off with a scream that shook the chandelier. "Defamation? Did you just say defamation?" Her voice cracked like glass. "How do you defend blood that speaks from the ground? They have our daughter. They have our daughter. They have the covenant, the priest's diary. The debt is awake." The lawyer stepped back, unnerved. This was no longer about legal strategy. This was madness. By dawn, the streets swelled with anger. Protesters carried placards with Adaku's name, chanting for justice. Some marched peacefully, their voice rising in sorrow. Others turned violent, hurling stones at billboards, that bore Mrs. Silver's face. Banks, rumors to be linked to the empire were attacked. Stores boycott her products. Her company's share crashed like a plane falling from the sky. For the first time in decades, Mrs. Silver's untouchable empire trembled. At the same time, Chuka found himself as a national hero and a marked man. Strangers bowed their head to him on the street. Mothers pressed his hand, whispering blessing. Men clapped his shoulder, saying, "You've done well. You've done what no one dared do. Thank you, brother." But beneath the praise lay danger. That evening, he received an unmarked envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a single photograph of him, captured leaving the newsroom the night before. On the back, scrawled in red ink, was, "You've woken what you have slept. Blood answers for blood." Chuka's stomach knotted. He folded the photo carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. Fear pressed against his script, but he refused to let it swallow him. Back at Adejoke crumbling mansion, Mrs. Silver retreated into a private chamber. No servant dare enter. Candles burned low. Incense coiled like serpent. She opened a hidden chest and drew one relic, bone scrapped in red cloth, bottle filled with dark liquid, charm glittering with oil. She knelt, whispering frantically, "You promised me safety. You promised me safety. You promised me wealth. You promised me unending wealth. Why do they rise against me now? Why can't you protect me? I need you to protect me." The flame flickered, and in the silence, a soft hiss seemed to answer her. She froze. Her hand trembled. Was it her imagination? Or had the covenant begun to collect its debt from her? The ones who thought herself mistress of fate. By the end of the week, the nation was at boiling point. Parliament called an emergency session. Religious leader denounced Mrs. Silver, demanding her arrest. International agency announced investigation into her finances. But beneath all the noise, one truth settled like a shadow. The covenant still lived. For while the people screamed for justice in court, there were whispers that something darker was stirring. People claimed to hear the wails in the night near her properties. The sound of women crying, "I was betrayed. I was sacrificed. My blood cried for justice." Others swore they saw Adaku's figure, dressed in white, walking barefoot, wandering the city streets at night. Her eyes hollow, her presence chilling. Chuka sat alone in his apartment one night, reviewing the flood of evidence still pouring in. Yet, even as he typed, he felt it, an uneasy, a weight pressing at the back of his skull. The light flickers. The hair grew cold. Then, softly, a whispered caress his hair. "You have unveiled my death, but will you survive my truth?" He spun around. The room was empty, his chest hammered with fear. Chuka gripped the edge of his desk, staring into the shadow. The blood debt had been released, but something told him this was only the beginning. The sun rose pale and uncertain that morning, as though the heavens themselves hesitated to shine on what was to unfold. For days, the country had boiled with outrage, their cries stretching from dusty village square to glittering city streets. But today was different. Today was the day the trial of Mrs. Silver, the unshakable woman, now shackled by her own secret, would begin. The courthouse overflowed with people. Journalists jostled for space. Cameras flashed, and the air thrummed with tension. At the center sat Mrs. Silver, wrapped in a plain grey gown, her usual glamour stripped away. Her once perfect wig was gone, exposing tiny hair. She looked smaller, like a queen dragged from her throne and left to wilter in the crowd she once ruled. Behind her, her lawyer fumbled with files. Before her, a panel of judges sat down, faced like carved stone. And in the witness stand, her presence cutting the room like knife, stood Ifeoma Adaku's daughter. She was tall, composed, her eyes glistering but unwavering. She wore no jewelry, no extravagance, only a white blouse and black skirt, as though carrying the memory of her mother in her simplicity. When she began to speak, her voice trembled at first, but soon it steadied, carrying the weight of generations. My mother, Adaku, was not a ghost in the nation's memory. She was flesh and blood, with laughter like music. She loved her people. She loved me, but she was betrayed by the very hand that promised to guide her. Mrs. Silver lured her with false hope, then sold her life to the darkness for wealth, for empire, for power. The courtroom gasped. Mrs. Silver lowered her eyes, her fingers clenching the dock as though she wished to vanish. Ifelma lifted a diary, worn and cracked. "This," she declared, "is the priest's record. It bears the covenant, the blood oath, the names of those who took part. It proved beyond doubt that my mother was murdered, not by chance, but by sacrifice." Murmured rose like thunder. The judge leaned forward, examining the evidence. Chuka, seated among reporters, scribbled furiously, every nerve in his body alive with purpose. Finally, the judge turned to Mrs. Silver. "Do you deny this claim? Do you deny the evidence?" For a long time, she sat in silence. Her chest rose and fell heavily. Then suddenly she laughed, a broken, bitter laugh that echoed in the hall. "Deny?" she croaked. "How do you deny a death that follows you even in your dreams? How do you deny the face of a woman who never stopped weeping? I see her. I see her every night. She stands by my bed, her eyes burning, her voice crying for justice and justice and justice." Gasps filled the room. Some crossed themselves, others wept. Mrs. Silver's eyes darted widely, her hands trembling. "I thought I had buried her. Honestly, I thought I buried her. I thought wealth could silence blood. But blood remembers. Blood speaks. And now it demands me." She broke into sobs, her shoulder heaving, her empire crumbling in a single confession. The lead judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order! Order!" he thundered. "This court find Mrs. Silver guilty of abuse, maltreatment, conspiracy, of ritual sacrifice, of murder clocked as covenant. You shall spend the remainder of your life behind prison walls. Your wealth shall be seized, your companies dismantled, and this nation shall learn from your fall that no power built on blood shall stand." The gavel fell with a sharp crack that felt like thunders. The crowd erupted. Some cried tears of relief. Others raised their fists in triumph. For the first time in decades, they had seen justice not bought, not twisted, but served. Ifeoma sank to her knee, her face in her hand, whispering through sobs, "Mama, you can rest now." Among the crowd sat Madame Esther, her head covered with a simple scarf, tears running down her cheeks. For years she had enabled Adejoke's cruelty out of fear and greed, but today she felt reborn. Reporters swarmed her after the hearing, expecting her to defend her old mistress. Instead, she raised her voice and said, "Let this be a warning to women like me who allowed fear to blind them. I saw evil and I kept quiet. Today, I vow to never be silent again. I will dedicate the rest of my life to helping women who are trapped in servitude." Her word struck the nation. Madame Esther was no longer a shadow under Adejoke's wing. She was a voice for the broken. Outside the court, a small figure clutched Chuka's hand. It was Kemi, once a frightened housemaid, now standing tall, her school uniform crisp and neat. Through Chuka's investigation, Kemi's story had been heard. The beating, the humiliation, the night of silent tears. But Kemi had not been forgotten. Donation poured in from strangers who watched the broadcast. She now attended one of the best schools in the city, sponsored by the foundation Chuka quietly set up. When a journalist asked her what justice meant to her, Kemi looked up, her voice soft but firm. "It means I can dream again," she said. Her words trended across social media, a simple phrase that carried the weight of a nation's conscience. At the far end of the courtroom, Baba, the driver, for decades he had served silently, driving Adejoke across city while swallowing the things he saw and heard. He was the keeper of secrets, the one who looked away. But during the trial, it was Baba's testimony that had pierced the court like a knife. He had finally spoken. The night runs, the envelope of cash, the threat he overheard. His truth helped seal Adejoke's fate. When the verdict was ready, Baba did not smile. Instead, he whispered, "At last, my silence is no longer a burden." For the first time, his loyalty was not to a mistress, but to justice. Chuka felt a lump rise in his throat. He had seen many trials, many stories of corruption and decay, but this one was different. This was a story of blood, of truth, of depth that had haunted generations until courage dragged it into the light. As Adejoke was led away in handcuffs, the camera caught her one last time. She did not beg, she did not even cry, but in her eyes was the torment of a woman who had gained the world and lost her soul. Chuka, standing at the courthouse step, addressed the crowd and the millions watching live. "Power is nothing when built on blood and lies. The truth will always come, even if it hid for decades. Let this story remind us, silence helped the oppressor, but courage freed the oppressed. We must all choose where we stand." The crowd roared in agreement. Some wept, some cheered, but all felt the weight of his war. As Chuka left the courthouse, a chill bruised his pain. He glanced back and swore he saw her, Adaku. She stood at the edge of the crowd, wrapped in white, her face calm now, her eyes soft. She met his gaze for a moment, then turned to Ifeoma, her hand resting lightly on her daughter's shoulder. Then, like mist under sunlight, she faded. The weeks that followed changed Nigeria. Laws were drafted against ritual practice disguised as business covenants. Schools taught children about the sanctity of life and the dangers of greed. Churches and mosques thundered sermons against blood sacrifice, abuse and maltreatment, and even secret pacts. Mrs. Silver's empire was stripped brick by brick, her mansion turned into orphanage, her fortune redirected to fund education for girls. Adaku's dream reborn through her daughter. Chuka's name was etched into the nation's memory as the journalist who dared to unveil what others buried. Yet he carried the story not as glory but as a scar, a reminder that truth is heavy, costly and sacred. And Ifeoma, she became more than her mother's daughter. She became a voice for the voiceless, a symbol that blood, though spilled, could birth justice if remembered. Years later, when children ask about the blood debt, their parents will sign and tell them the story, a story of a woman who sold a sister for silver, of a nation blinded by power, and of the voice who refused to stay silent. And always the story ended with the same word: no empire built on blood will last. Justice may delay, but it does not sleep. Madam Esther opened a woman's center in her community. Kemi became its youngest ambassador, her smile now a symbol of resilience. Baba retired, not in shame, but in peace, often found sitting under the mango tree near his home, telling stories about how silence can kill, but truth can heal. And Chuka, he published his book, The Blood Debt, A Nation's Lesson. It became a bestseller, not because it entertained, but because it reminded the world of one unshakable truth. Evil may hide, but it cannot escape justice forever. And with this, we have come to the end of this amazing story. I really hope that you all enjoyed the story of Madam Adejoke Silva. Let me know if you have ever seen someone as wicked, as ruthless, as cruel as Madam Adejoke Silva in the comment section. And by the way, this is also a true life story. Now, don't forget to like this story and, of course, share it with your loved ones. And if you have not joined our channel yet, kindly join this community. We are waiting for you. Let's be a one happy and bigger family together. Till my next story, please stay safe and stay blessed.